Welcome back to Crafting for Profit Live, the podcast where we help makers turn their passion into a thriving business. Today, we have an exciting episode all about scaling up and taking handmade products to the next level. So, if you've ever wondered about how to get a product manufactured, or if you're nervous about working with manufacturers, this is the episode for you.
At some point in your craft business, you might hit a limit on how much you can physically make. Maybe you're spending all your time fulfilling orders instead of growing your business, or maybe material costs and labor are cutting too deeply into your profits.
Manufacturing can be a game changer, allowing you to scale production, reduce costs, and free up time for product development, marketing, other things in your business. But the transition from handmade to manufacturing, that can feel very overwhelming. I'm overwhelmed even talking about it right now. So let's answer some of the questions you might have. How do you find the right manufacturer? How do you make sure your product maintains its quality? And what pitfalls should you watch out for?
To answer these questions, we're chatting with Jess Boro, the creative mind behind Back to Basics Kids and the inventor of Wonder Discs, a fun interactive toy that helps kids play, explore, and learn. Jess started by making these discs herself, but as demand grew, she knew she had to find a way to scale. So today she's sharing the journey of moving from handmade to manufacturing, the challenges she faced, and what she's learned along the way.
So we have pre-recorded this episode, but we're still chatting with you live as it airs on YouTube. So if you have questions for us, feel free to drop into that live chat and ask us any questions you have as we go along. Now, if you missed the live chat, you're watching the replay, you're listening to us on the podcast, you can always ask us questions in the forum we've linked in the YouTube description and the podcast notes. And even those off-topic questions, you can put those there as well.
All right, are we ready to dive in? All right, Jess, can you give us a little background about your company and how you started to make Wonder Discs?
Sure thing. I'm Jess. I'm actually a mom of three kids, and I have a husband. We live in Maryland together. I was actually a teacher before I started Back to Basics, and I became a stay-at-home mom. And now I have Back to Basics. I started it in the summer of 2020, making learning toolkits for kids who are doing online learning then, and kind of happened upon resin as a craft material. I started making resin letter sets for kids to play with and learn with. And then a friend suggested that I try putting little objects into a coaster size shape to make a disc for kind of a seek and find. I was absolutely hooked on the craft and wanted to find a way to sell them. Resin is such a unique material to work with, and I have a love for tiny objects. I loved being able to customize them with glitter too, and glitter that wouldn't end up all over your house. Um, Not only was resin so much fun to work with, but I absolutely loved being able to make just such a unique and customizable product. I ended up making hundreds of them by hand, both themes and custom requests. I also created gift sets pairing custom theme discs with books during the holidays.
So that's a lot of discs.
It was a lot of discs.
That's a lot of resin crafting in your house as well.
Yes.
All right. So, what made you change your process from handmade to manufactured then?
I was actually doing a market with Crystal from Life Love Creations. She was on your podcast a few months ago talking about her craft fair tips. And I was approached by another vendor who was also at the market. The vendor had a jewelry business and she worked with manufacturers to create her own product line. She was obsessed with the discs that I was making and was like, you can blow this up. You should manufacture these and I can help you. Honestly, I was a little caught off guard because I had never thought about not making them myself or really scaling my business beyond what I could hand make. The product was really tedious and time consuming to make. Each of the discs that I was making had probably like 100 hand placed objects of various sizes and resin layers that needed to cure. And so I just thought like this wasn't something that could be made besides by hand. But in thinking back, in many ways, the conversation and the timing of the conversation was perfect because I was in the middle of a big disruptive home renovation and I was working out of my basement, and it wasn't an ideal situation for a dusty and messy renovation with the process of working with resin. Resin needs to have a dust-free environment. It needs to have a temperature-controlled environment. And so when I was approached by this manufacturing liaison, let's say, it was kind of perfect timing because I was pausing for the holidays and at a point in the renovation where I couldn't continue making resin products with the condition of my home. So it really gave me time to kind of think about what other options I had when I really hadn't considered it before.
So, what is the process like to get them manufactured? And how did you find and vet manufacturers? Like, what does that even look like?
So the process has been long and winding. At first, when I met this woman who approached me, she was really excited to partner with me and help get my discs manufactured. So since her specialty was jewelry, it was definitely different than resin, but she had a connection with a factory in China that was willing to try to create my discs. We went back and forth together. Um, I gave her samples of the size of the mold that I used, the types of objects, the types of glitter. We talked a lot about measurements, and she physically sent some of those things along with photos of my product to her factory in China. I quickly realized, though, that resin production was still going to be time consuming and therefore really costly to make. And so the margins weren't going to be reasonable for my customer, the families and parents who purchased my Wonder Discs. And so I needed to brainstorm some other ways to create my product. To save money and create more flexibility and a range of like themes and designs, I decided to move away from using tiny objects and instead use digital images to create some of the same seek and find concept in my Wonder Discs. I'd begun the process of trademarking my business and product name and came up with the name Wonder Disc. And I started working with a graphic designer who creates the individual images. And then I put them into the themes and designs for each disc. So I've tried a bunch of different ways. I actually had some help from Crystal who helped me sublimate them onto an acrylic, but there wasn't a way to get the same like glittery effect that I was able to have with resin. I tried the UV direct to transfer on a glitter acrylic, but that wasn't exactly what I wanted. And then I found that there were some smaller scale manufacturers who specialized in things like acrylic keychains. I tested out several of those places. I tried having them manufacture them kind of as a keychain, but without like the hole or the keychain accessories. So I tested prototypes with a US manufacturer. The acrylic was too thin and didn't have like any options for it to be glittery or holographic. I tried a company in the UK. They had an acrylic, but it was just printed on only one side. And I really wanted to like kind of have a two-sided product. And then I've tried two Chinese manufacturers and finally landed on the company Melody that I'm working with now, who was able to give me the thick acrylic that I wanted to have, the double sided printing, the holographic layer of film that they're able to put in it to really keep that shimmer in my product.
So you're talking about trying this with like a US manufacturer, UK manufacturer. Like, how did you find those people? So, like simple Google search or like word of mouth?
Yeah, so I did some Googling and honestly it was difficult because I was like switching to types of material. So kind of in that transition of like trying sublimation, that kind of got me thinking about like what other materials besides resin could I use? So then once I started thinking into acrylic, like how else could I apply images? I found out about the like printing. I did actually have a company that would like print in the US. I forgot about this one too, would print onto acrylic and then like using lasers like you guys often use, like cut them out too. But the acrylic that and the machines that cut the acrylic that's available in the United States is just not as thick. And so it was difficult to try to find a company that would cut because my product is like pretty substantial in your hand. Like it's almost like half an inch, maybe three-quarters of an inch even thick. It has like a little bit of weight to it. So it feels sturdy when kids are playing with it. The other acrylics that were available here and the machines to cut them were just not able to do that. And so then I think I may have gotten an ad on Instagram for the two Chinese companies that I tried that had these products that are called standees, I guess, where you make like a little, like something you put on your desk and you design the image for it. And so that kind of gave me the idea. I was like, wow, that acrylic is really thick. The edges are really clear. This could actually be like the perfect material for my product.
Yeah, you search anything and all of a sudden you get ads for it. Perfect
Exactly.
timing.
I feel like that has happened a lot with. So I manufacture my stickers here in the US. I have them printed by a local company instead of doing them myself. And when I was searching for, sticker companies, my ads were every sticker company that you could
Exactly. Yeah.
imagine.
And then you find the correct like words that are helping you to like search for what you're looking for too, which really helps.
That does help.
So then what factors went into your decision when finally choosing your manufacturer. So, like cost, quality, location, materials, that type of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that I was just saying is that I really wanted my product to feel um, as close to the resin like product that my customers were used to. I had so many loyal customers who really loved what they called my OG discs, that I really wanted to like make them as similar as possible. And the product was going to change, but I knew that I really wanted that like thickness and kind of heft to it. And so that was one of the things that I really prioritized. Like, who could give me that um, quality of materials. Another thing that was really important to me was being able to have some kind of shimmer or glitter or holographic effect. And so I needed to find a manufacturer that could do that. Now, obviously, cost is a factor too. My product is made for kids as a toy for families to like play with, to enjoy. And the cost of all of these different parts of the process like completely add up. And I needed to find something that was able to like keep costs down as well. One of the things that was difficult, but also has improved a bit is that I was making very little profit, if any at all, when I was making these discs by hand. As most handmade product crafters know, we often don't factor in our own time into the products that we're making. And so while I was like not thrilled about manufacturing my product, I also knew that like I was still investing a lot of time in the designing of my product. I was still investing a lot of time in like, I still package the product by hand. I still do the marketing for my product, the ideas and things like that. That this was something that in order to grow, in order to continue to like come up with new ideas, that it would be okay to move in a different direction. I think, one thing that's challenging too is that you have you give up a little bit of the control over your product too, because you have to, wait for it. You have to be able to communicate. It's not just you as a crafter, at your kitchen table, if that's where you craft, or if you're lucky to have a studio where you craft or something like that. And so that's definitely a challenge, is kind of moving something that's like your handmade product to a manufactured product.
So this is not a question that we had planned, but I have a question. Was it like emotionally difficult for you to move from making your product, by hand to using a manufacturer?
Yes. Um, I loved the process of creating with resin. I would just get in the zone. I would listen to so many audiobooks. I would listen to so many podcasts. It was incredibly tedious. I would just like sit hunched over and like put all of these objects in it. It was just very like um meditative, exactly. But I would like just get in the zone and get like so many of these done. And I also like just handmade them, and people were in awe. There really wasn't a product like this. They're very sparkly. You're like, you pick them up and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so many tiny things in here. It's incredible. A lot of customers were super supportive, and a lot of customers were like, oh, we really miss the old ones. Like I have an OG one. Like I miss the glitter. This one's not as shiny. And that's really hard. I'm a complete perfectionist. I want to please everybody. And so that was really emotional for me. And also I feel like I have a product that is really helpful for families and really fun for kids. And it's not on a screen. You can literally put it in your purse. You don't have to charge it. Like I had to balance, like, do I want to continue to like bring this into the world? Or do I want to say, like, I can only make, 40 of these at a time? And in full disclosure, I was working with resin. Resin is a chemical. I was wearing like a respirator mask, and I was also doing it in my basement where I didn't have great ventilation. After not working with resin, I realized I wasn't having headaches every single day. And so it's definitely something that like I would never have been able to scale my business. It's definitely has pros and cons, and it's been emotional for sure. There's been times where I'm like, well, maybe I should just give it up because it's not the exact same as it was. And I think that's definitely a challenge of like how a business changes and grows, and kind of the growing pains. I look back at my originals and I'm like, wow, these were incredible, and the new ones are different. But now I have a product line that has, I think, like 35 or 40 different SKUs, and that's really exciting to have so many options for so many interests and so many different kinds of kids. So yeah, it's definitely been emotional.
It's almost like the trade off of reaching more people with the product, helping more families,
Hmm.
but not having that hands-on thing and the same
For
look.
sure.
So it's almost like a trade-off, but
Hmm.
that like any trade off in business, it happens.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, want to do our commercial break, Corey?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so we just finished up our latest crafting event, Craft Organization Camp. We wanted to mention it one more time on the podcast in case you missed it. It was amazing. We had 24 speakers, was it? And 30 classes, brand new classes, and all about organizing your craft supplies, whether you are just a crafter who crafts at home for family and friends, or you run a handmade business. Like we all have that problem of like your craft supplies are everywhere.
I feel like it was such a good camp because I don't know, it was just so practical. It was just so many good tips and tricks to like actually get started because it's really hard to start, you know, organizing your craft space and then it's really hard to maintain it. And so we had so many great classes. We had like about specific types of organizing. So whether if you knit or crochet or you have fabric or you have crafting machines, there were all sorts of classes, plus a lot of general classes, how to declutter sentimental stuff. I mean, we really covered it all.
Yeah, I love that this camp allowed us to expand out a little bit. So you don't have to be a Cricut crafter or a sublimation crafter to enjoy this camp. If you craft with anything, yes, resin included, then you can definitely get something out of this camp and learn about organizing your craft supplies.
All right. So if you missed it, if you didn't attend with us, you can still get the all access pass. And we have a discount for you. So you can use the code ORGCAMP, ORGCAMP, to save $20 on the pass. And you will get $280 in bonuses. So this is a great deal. You'll get access to these videos for at least a year. Get your space organized, a bunch of bonuses, labels, all sorts of stuff. Angie has put a QR code up in the corner of the screen here. And there's also a running banner at the bottom if you're on YouTube. So you can go to craftorganizationcamp.com and get your all access pass. All right, let's get back into it. So, what kind of hurdles have there been with manufacturers abroad? I feel like working with somebody here in the US, might not be quite as difficult than like all of a sudden going to another country and saying, hey, can you manufacture this for me?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as you can imagine, like kind of the biggest thing has been the time change that makes it challenging to communicate since the manufacturer that I'm working with is in China and our business hours and China's business hours really don't overlap at all. At first, when I was working with the manufacturing liaison, just to kind of like figure out if I could do resin, she would email with the factory and then she would connect with me. It was a lot of back and forth. And honestly, as someone who had entire control over my product, I found that part kind of frustrating. I really liked my handmade disc because I was in charge of it from beginning to end. If they turned out amazing, I was super proud. If there was a flaw or a defect, I could troubleshoot it. And not being the one in charge of that was and continues to be kind of challenging. I would say that the other hurdle is just it's hard to wait for your product. As crafters, I feel like we like the immediate gratification of making something and seeing it come to life and having it. Like I loved that when I was working with resin. I would demold my disc the next morning and be thrilled like every single time. And so now it's really hard to wait for a picture or a video of the product in process. It's challenging to learn the kind of the routines and the schedules of different holidays and closures that manufacturers have that are different than we have in the United States. So that's something that I'm learning to navigate. Another hurdle has been shipping. I know we're very used to things shipping very quickly in the United States. And it's just my manufacturer is a world away. It's very far away. And so I've had to factor in not only the time, but the cost of, choosing to ship by sea or to ship by air. Another new hurdle that I actually haven't yet overcome, but I will in the next few weeks is tariffs. That's something that I haven't yet figured out what will impact me and honestly has changed every single day. But because my product can't yet be manufactured in the United States, I have to figure out when my shipment comes in, how I will pay the tariff that is on it now. So those are kind of the hurdles that really are just anytime you're going to outsource your product to something, especially if it's overseas, that is kind of, I'm having to learn on the go.
So we were chatting about this before we got on the air here. And I just ordered my first thing from China. And for me, it was 5,000 pink envelopes. So it's not a product that has to be made. I knew exactly what I wanted. I found a company I went to Alibaba, found a company that had good reviews, had done a lot of business in the United States before, contacted them, but I had the same sort of issues where it was like, oh, yeah, I'm not on the same time zone. So it took, instead of being able to write a bunch of emails back and forth, it was like one email per day, that kind of thing. And it just took a lot longer. And then I chose to ship by boat. So I ordered them in the middle of February and they will get here probably in the middle of April. And so, that's 2 months shipping. That is not Amazon Prime. That is
Yeah.
not what I'm used to. But I was able to get a better deal on the envelopes and I was able to order more than 50 at a time, which is what I was ordering on Amazon.
Mhm.
With the shipping lead times, I'm going to guess that you also have to store more inventory, like you have more, like have your money wrapped up in
Yeah.
inventory, I would guess.
Yeah, and that's been tricky because my business is still relatively small. And I am, dipping my toes slowly into wholesale. Like most of my business is through my own website. And I've started to kind of like try to figure out like wholesale relationships that are still very small quantities, but it is a risk because it's not something where I have figured out yet the lead times to say to a wholesaler, like, here's a summer product line. And I know exactly like when that would all be ready for you. So that's definitely something that if you're working with a manufacturer to consider. And for me, like I'm almost through in June, I will have worked with my manufacturer for an entire year to kind of just get a sense of like, okay, January, things definitely take longer. If you're working with a Chinese manufacturer, they have a 2 week holiday where everyone gets a holiday vacation. Like this factory is shut down. There is nobody's answering emails. Like, and that's something that as an American, like you have to like know, respect, and plan into your business schedule. And so that's something that like other times of the year, things moved a lot more quickly. But it's just kind of a learning process this first year.
Yeah, I definitely reached out to somebody in the middle of the Lunar New Year holiday.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was like, what is
Yeah,
what?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's different. It's different than here. Yeah, for sure.
I think we all need a 2 week paid, like our 2 week vacation where just everything shuts down. So
Yeah,
America, if you're listening, let's get on
take
that.
note.
I would definitely go for that. Let's have a couple of those.
Mhm.
All right. So when you were searching for a manufacturer, any red flags to watch out for people?
I think you know one of the things that would be a red flag to me is asking for a lot of money up front and the quantities that you're having to order up front. I have been really, really grateful that in all of my like prototyping with different manufacturers that I tried out, there are quantity minimums and those were relatively low. And with most of them, it wasn't like a huge risk. Not all of them, sent me photographs or videos ahead of time. But with Melody in particular, like I got photos and videos of them with a product like a real person like held it up and showed me what it looked like before I even had to pay the invoice and before they made the rest of the quantity that I ordered. And so that's been really kind of a green flag actually, rather than a red flag, but that's something to communicate about with them, with whoever you end up using for a manufacturer. I think another kind of like flag or red flag to look for is do they work with the material that you want? When I was, initially thinking about manufacturing, the woman that I met at the craft market, she was primarily focused on jewelry, which was very different from what I was creating. So finding the manufacturer and like her factory was willing to try to do the resin product, but finding the manufacturer who ultimately worked with the material that I would want, and I ended up going the acrylic route and has the machines that create what I was hoping for has really made the process go a lot more smoothly. I think another like green flag is, like I said, having them send you photos or a video of the sample. I think another thing is that if they have like the materials that you want, but then also have some other like parts that will help your product. So for me, my manufacturer has been so helpful in creating and redesigning the packaging that fits my needs. So I don't actually have like multiple people that I have to go to. So they like create my Wonder discs. I send them the files for the backer cards. I send them the files when I create drawstring bags. They put my branding on that. They like customize the size for the bags so that they fit my product. They've created like custom size cellophane bags and PVC boxes. So all of that has been really great because and it's more of a green flag than a red flag, that like they are able to kind of help with those kinds of things to kind of make it, like an all encompassed package, like for your product.
Yeah, I've noticed that because I've been thinking about there's a couple products that I want to make that I don't think I could craft myself.
Mhm.
Or one of those is actually acrylic keychains,
Mhm.
which is why I've been looking at Melody Charms since you sent
Mhm.
me that link. And I like the fact that you could also get, backer cards printed or,
Yep.
tags or whatever else you might need, because then I was also like, who just prints backer card? Like, it's just like
Right.
this, it's so overwhelming to think of all the little pieces that you might need, especially if you want to do wholesale at some point, because wholesaling, I can throw a keychain in a padded envelope, but wholesaling might want, a backer card or tag or, something like that to go with it. And my brain is like, I don't even know how to do that. So that's really helpful to think about it as sort of the whole package when you're
Yeah.
ordering from.
And it ends up saving you money too, because if you're getting it from all one person, you're not like setting up a new account somewhere. You're not like having to communicate with somebody. They have your product in hand. Like one time I sent them a file that was not the correct size. And they were like, we can actually just resize this for you so that it fits with, I had a larger size Wonder Disc. And I was like, thank you so much. They created the cellophane bag to fit it. And so that's been really helpful. Not every company that, you're going to find something that they're going to have like a one-stop shop for it. But if you can, it's definitely helpful.
I feel like I say this every time, but I do want people to trust their gut in this. Like if your interaction feels funny, it might not be the right manufacturer for you. Like that
Mhm.
could be a red flag in itself. I feel like I say that in every other podcast episode, but I feel like trusting your gut in a lot of this is going to be helpful as well.
Yeah.
And I
And I
think
feel like I email actually instead of just going through the website and like filling up my cart and purchasing, I actually email with a contact at the manufacturer whenever I place an order. And we go back and forth about like, here's exactly what I want. Like, here's the details of it. And every time, um, just to make sure that it's going to be correct, you're investing a lot of your money. You're investing your time. Like, even though I'm just sending files over there, like I've spent a lot of time working on those files. I want it to be correct. And I'm not going to be able to, you know, like use it if it's messed up somehow because there's a miscommunication. And so I think not just like ordering it the way that you would order something from a store, just making sure that you feel like it's completely fine. Reach out to the customer service email if you're unsure about any of the details. And my experience with actually like I would say most of the manufacturers that I did prototypes for, they were very willing to like tell me that they've double checked it, say that this is going to work, like show me a sample on a different like material or things like that, because like, they want their customers to be happy. They want to have good reviews. And so that's also like another green flag to look for. Like if they're not getting back to you, might be a place that you want to move on from.
I think that's such a good point. So I work with Stickers for Days, which is based here in Bellingham, Washington, which is awesome because they're a fairly large sticker printer. And I just emailed them instead of going through their website because I needed some things when I first started making my stickers. And now every order I place is
Mhm.
through them. And I have, more than one sticker that says just one more chapter. They're different. I've got more than one that says read banned books. Different styles. And so they'll always confirm, like, you want this one, let's do this. They confirm sizing, they send me
Mhm.
proofs. And it's all done through email, which I think is just so much better than going through a website. So if you can get that service email and then they're sending you those proofs and chatting with you, I feel like that's just such a better way to go, unless it's like a product that is just going to be fine,
Yeah.
you're just ordering as is. But yeah, I think that's a great green flag.
Yeah.
All right. So once you have received your product from the manufacturer, how did you ensure quality and consistency in your products? And have you had any issues?
My manufacturer has taken like really great care to package things well. But mistakes have happened. I always make sure that I count the inventory that I receive and note or document any damaged items. It's something that it happens in business. And so I just communicate that with them if there are issues. Like I've had, a couple Wonder Discs that have like a little bit of rough edge or something like that. So I let them know that, we might need a problem solved. So the next shipment is packaged differently or items are wrapped differently. I think also when you're using manufacturers from abroad, customs is allowed to check your packages and open the orders and shuffle through them. And so it's important to me that my items like aren't scratched or damaged during that part. And customs has to do their job. And so, just working with your manufacturer to make sure that your products are going to be protected. Like mine, I ask them to keep the protective layer on both sides of the acrylic. And I take that off once the Wonder Discs get to me, and then I package them up. And so like my product comes like Wonder Discs that are packaged, then like the backer cards are separate. And then any other packaging or drawstring bags or whatever that I've ordered is all separate. And so that has helped too. But it's just really about like that communication. And, like there have been times where like I have messed up and I realized like I just have to throw these away. Like I sent a file that had an error where I literally forgot a letter of the alphabet in one of my alphabet discs. And it's just like, well, that's on me, right? Like that is not my manufacturer's fault. And, I told them like, please delete this file from your from your list for me. And just, those are mistakes that you just make as a business owner. But yeah, just like checking your things when you receive them is definitely what you have to do.
So if you end up with damaged products, um, are those just, do you just write that off or do
Yeah.
you do?
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no
Just
really
the loss.
recourse.
Not really. No, I mean, I let my kids use them.
They don't need that extra letter of the alphabet. It's
No, they're
fine.
fine. They're fine.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, to craft it, you could just make like a little box of like not not great.
Not great ones. Yeah, exactly.
Not great ones.
Yeah.
It could be a game. Can you find the missing letter of the alphabet?
Yes. Find my mistake.
So I'm curious, and this is not on the questions.
Yeah.
Because your product is for kids, are there any special considerations like with the manufacturer or with importation or selling it or anything like that?
Yeah. So that's actually something that I've had to learn too. So when I was like interacting with the manufacturing liaison that I met at the craft market, she actually invited me to come with her to America's Mart when they have their big show in
Yeah.
January. They have it like twice a year. January is their very big one. She has a showroom at America's Mart for her jewelry and like scarf and belt line. And she was like, do you want to show your Wonder Discs? This is back when I was still making resin discs by hand. And so I had like a 2 foot by 2 foot space in her showroom. But mostly I walked around at America's Mart and just kind of saw what other wholesalers were selling. And I spent a lot of time in the kids section. And I actually spoke with a couple of people. And I was like, wow, I learned that I have to do product safety testing. And so that could probably be a whole other podcast because it's actually like a really detailed and important process, but it is something that I am responsible for as a business owner. And so my products actually go to a testing lab. You send samples of your product every single time you create a product. So every like batch has to be tested, regardless of whether they are doing the exact same like materials and method as before. And so I have a testing lab that I pay to have my product sent to. So it goes straight from the manufacturer to the testing lab in China. And there's a set of approved testing labs that the United States Consumer Safety Protection Agency, I believe it's called, has on their list. And so my product goes there, a sample of them, and they test it for the things that in the age group that my product is for. And then they give me a certificate of compliance. And then that allows me to sell it as a children's product. There's also like certain tracking. So on every Wonder Disc, there's a number that identifies which batch it's part of. And so each different SKU, that number changes based on when the batch is created, so that if there were to be a problem, I could recall, like when there's product recalls, I could recall those products and reach out to the customers and say like yours was affected. And so that's been like a whole other learning part of the process. And what's tricky is that I learned that it's even for handmade products, which is challenging for small business owners. It's definitely a costly and like onerous process. The lab that I work with, like my product is very simple. There's not any small parts. And so that definitely makes it easier, but it's definitely been like just a whole other part of the learning process for me.
Okay, well, I'm definitely going to schedule you at some point to do a whole podcast on that because I feel like it's something that our people really need to know. And so, yes, you're going to be back on the podcast. Just let me know.
Yeah, like I had zero idea. Like half the things you said, I'm like zero idea of that.
Yeah, we don't make stuff for kids, so it's not something either of us has had to really,
Yeah.
look into. But I think that's a really important thing. And maybe we can chat about it on a future podcast episode, along with maybe some stuff about we can like do our own research and learn about food testing and those sorts of things as well, because
Yeah.
there's going to be stuff that goes into food and cosmetics as well if you're
Yeah.
selling those things.
Yeah, totally.
All right, back to the actual outline here.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
if you had it to do all over again, what would you do differently?
I think the biggest thing is that I would like now know that I need to just set much longer timelines. I love having an idea and seeing it come to fruition right away. Like when I was working with resin, it was even tedious for me to have to wait overnight for the resin to cure and harden so that I could like pop it out of the mold and see how my idea turned out. And this is just like exponentially longer. Like I have an idea and I will be like, okay, I need to ask my designer to create the images for me. And then I have to make them into the Wonder Disc file and I have to send it to my manufacturer. And it's going to take them, they're going to put it in their queue. And then I'm going to get it. If it's not during Lunar New Year, I'm going to get it, maybe 4 weeks later. And so for me as a small business owner who was used to being like, it's 4 weeks until Christmas. I'm going to start getting my Christmas materials together and here we go. And I'm going to take a picture and put it up on my Instagram and people are going to buy it and it's no big deal. It is so much trickier. That's like one of the things that because I'm working with manufacturing, it's just you're putting your product into somebody else's hands for a huge amount of the time. I am still learning how to like navigate those timelines and the timelines change. It's not the same every single time, depending on my quantity that I'm ordering, depending on what's happening. Like I said, with holidays, it changes. And even just the communication, like literally today, I replied to an email about whether I was using this shipping company or that shipping company. And like just I replied and they replied like last night. And so it's like now it's been a couple of days before we've agreed on which shipping company is the right one to use based on the weight of my product this time. And so those kind of timeline things I think is kind of the biggest change because it's just you're not in charge of that part anymore. And so you have to plan for that. And so planning for it is just trickier this time.
This really has me thinking about the stuff I'm thinking about getting manufactured. I probably should start working on Halloween right now. We're in the middle of March when we're
Absolutely.
recording this. And
Yeah.
Halloween did really well for me last year as far as ghosty book stuff did.
Mhm.
So that's probably the time for me to, if I want to manufacture some of these products that I've been thinking about, now's the time to start Halloween, which is crazy because it's St. Patrick's Day in like a week.
Yeah. And you might as well throw in your
Yeah,
winter holiday things as well. And
that's
then it's just like, well, should I just put in my spring things because then there's going to be Chinese New Year. I mean, like that's now how my brain thinks about the calendar. Like I have a Wonder Disc that I made for Ramadan. I'm going to have to save it for next year. Like it's going to come in my package and it's going to be too late. Like I thought it was going to be fine and it's not. And
even
that's just living hard. You know?
even with just getting my stickers printed locally, like there's still a wait time, right? There's usually a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how busy they are. I got my Valentine's Day stickers on February 13th this year. So I was like,
You're
well,
like,
these are
well,
put them in my Etsy shop, but they really are for next year.
mhm.
And that was my fault. I was really behind.
So I can see you having to be really organized. Is it just like, do you just have a spreadsheet? Is there some kind of special thing you're like calendar? Like I can see like this being a problem for me. So
Yeah, no,
what's your secret?
I should probably get better with making like the calendar for like my products, especially because I want to have like new products come out, right? Like I have kind of a standard set of SKUs that I would like to have in rotation all the time. But then like, there's a little bit of a sneak peek, but like this summer I have like a like summer camp kind of camping themed Wonder Disc that's coming out. And so like, will I just have it this summer or will that kind of be like retired and I'll have a new idea for next summer? And so that is something that like to kind of get better at in terms of keeping track of other things. Like I do have like several spreadsheets where like I was talking about that tracking code that, if I had to issue a recall that's necessary for the child safety protection, like I have a spreadsheet of all of those. It kind of bums me out because I have a Wonder Disc that is a little bit of a Taylor Swift themed. We call it the Singer Wonder Disc because it's not Taylor Swift themed, but and the tracking code had the number 13 in it. It happened to just be the 13th SKU that I made. And I'm a little bit sad, I have to admit, because now that I've made it again, I had to change the the tracking number on it, but that's just what you have to do. So, but things like that you have to just keep track of. It is a little mind boggling sometimes, especially when I'm like, okay, how much is this going to cost? Like, how much is it costing me? Like, factoring in all those things. But I try to stay as organized as I can. I don't know if I do the best job at it.
I have another question. Have
Mhm.
you had to get barcodes for your products?
I have not yet. So I have just a few wholesale clients that I've worked with. And so far, I have not had to do that. So if I do, I'm going to need to listen to a podcast about how
I
that
have,
works.
I purchased barcodes, so I feel like
You can fill me in.
at least I'm not like 3% of the way into the process of wanting to use barcodes. So
Just
uh,
the messages back from Corey convinced me that I didn't want to do barcodes.
I was trying to sell on TikTok shop of all things, and you apparently have to. They want you to have barcodes, and I was like, okay. And then
Yeah, I tried to set up a TikTok shop and I was like, it got out of hand.
you could not. I was like, I don't have the energy or time or
Yeah,
mental capacity for this.
I'll stick with Shopify and Fair.
Same. All right. So before we end, this has been super helpful for me, at least. I hope it's super helpful
Yes.
for a lot of our listeners. But you do have a deal from your manufacturer, Melody Charms. Would you like to tell us about it?
Yeah. So my manufacturer, Melody, specializes in acrylic keychains, stickers, pins. They also make some other unique products, which I kind of want to explore notebooks and totes and pillows. I know for me, they've made like my drawstring bags. So I know that they have the capability of making things like that. Melody has given us a code. It's all uppercase, Melody Jessica, all one word to use for $5 off your order. And you can use it every single time you place an order with them. And kind of like I mentioned, you'll go onto their website and it looks like a regular store where they have like fairly low minimum order quantities, but feel free to reach out to them if you're not sure like how to like structure your artwork on an acrylic keychain, or they're super easy to work with. So feel free, whether you're, filling up your cart and using the promo code, or mention it to them in an email too. But they're really great to work with.
Okay, so it's link.craftingcamps.com/Jess, and that's JESS. And that will take you to Melody and you can check it out. Use her code. We will put the link and the code in the description below. As well as I'm going to put a link for the Wonder Discs because we've been talking about those for 45 minutes. If you want to check out her product, then we'll put that link below as well. I mean, you can check it out, buy some if you want, that type of thing. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jess. Like seriously, such a good podcast episode. I learned a ton. Just in case I want to manufacture something sometime.
You should try it.
We love hearing real stories from makers who figured out how to grow their business in a way that works for them. And this is the perfect example. So if you're thinking about manufacturing your own products, take Jess's advice. So do your research, be patient with the process, get really, really organized, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
And yes, thanks again, Jess. Great podcast episode. And as always, listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your fellow makers. If you know a friend who is killing themselves hand making their products and you think, hey, you should probably get this manufactured, share this episode with them because they need to hear it. If you're ready to take your crafting to the next level, join our crafting community on Instagram. We are at Crafting Camps and we share tips and strategies to help you succeed there. We're really excited to finally have a social media account. You think we would have had one long before now, but we are growing it and we'd love to see you there.
So until next time, happy crafting. We will be back in 2 weeks with another episode.